What is the people's car in developing countries? This presentation was created by Joseph Russell Timpu Geisen. Many people want cars, but they are expensive, especially brand new cars. Not many people buy cars on a cash basis. Most cars are bought on installment. Payment terms are usually spread for 2 years or more. This is evidence that common people cannot afford cars, especially brand new ones. People usually resort to buying second-hand cars, which are way cheaper but require more maintenance costs. Single people or even couples may not need cars initially, but when they start to have families, especially with a couple of young kids, their need for a car intensifies. This is the reason why family-sized cars are the biggest selling cars in terms of capacity. Car manufacturers are not blind to this. Arguably the most famous car manufacturer in the world, past and present, was Henry Ford, and his cars were designed with this in mind. His cars became the best-selling cars in America. The Volkswagen is another car that made its mark, but this time throughout the world. Invented by the Germans as their people's car, it was not only a success in Germany but throughout the world. The production line for Volkswagen ran for decades before it stopped, but people have already fallen in love with its odd shape, which was not the conventional shape of the cars of that age. People also loved its cheapness and its simple functional design, making it truly one of the first prototype for a people's car as its inventors have intended it to be. Governments are not blind to this idea. The idea being the people's car. Many have tried to duplicate the success of the Volkswagen, but no one came close. American manufacturers tried to invent a people's car that will be accepted throughout the world, but they often keep falling for the trap of mistaking what Americans need versus what other countries need in terms of design and price. For example, American cars are designed to prevent cooling of the radiators during winter to prevent the engine from stalling. In tropical countries, these features are sometimes removed by mechanics to prevent cars this time from overheating. The price also of American cars are always way too expensive for the average people in other countries, most especially developing and third world countries. Japan was the first country to make a successful attempt to the price problem. It designed smaller and more compact cars, especially family cars, which were very different from American-made cars. They concentrated first on designing no-frills cars, which are far removed from the mostly glitzy cars, already cutting the price because of this move. Japanese cars are also smaller in size and design. They made a sharp departure to the big American seating design. It was a running joke for a long time that Americans and other taller, mostly European people cannot fit in Japanese-made cars because they were too small for them. These features further decreased the price of their cars. Japan also trimmed the quality of their car interiors as well as the outside visual effects of their cars to again further reduce the prices of their cars. The Japanese also made their car engines efficient. They were not the very strong and fast but gas-guzzling American car engines. They were different. They were not as strong or fast as the American car engines, but they were more economical and reliable. In fact, Japanese-made cars became known for this. They were cheaper than American-made cars, but they were more reliable and cheap to maintain. They were so successful, in fact, that even in America the cars of Japan are even being favored by Americans themselves. Japanese cars are not only famous in America but throughout the world, especially in Asia, where their cost and size are ideal for Asian people. For example, Japanese-made cars fit better the narrow streets of many Asian countries, while American cars are more difficult to drive in Asia thanks to their big sizes. But even Japan has failed to produce a car that would be affordable to most people in the world. India, with its very large population, also attempted this. China, now a world leader in industrialization and in producing cheap goods, has spent little time building its own car industry. It is also using the same strategy once employed by Japan, which made its cars known worldwide. Yet we still do not see Chinese-made cars dominating the world market for cars. The cars of today are still too expensive for the common people. It does not matter where the cars are produced. It does not matter if the cars were made in America, China, Japan, or in any other country. The dream of every car manufacturer that their car will be owned by almost every people on Earth will not happen. Cars even today are still very expensive for the common man. Cars are the second most expensive item a family buys after their house. The prices of cars have been gradually falling down through the years as more efficient car-making techniques and competition from car manufacturers against other car manufacturers intensifies. In an effort to make cars more affordable to people, some governments have been negotiating with car manufacturers to have their cars semi-assembled overseas and then fully assembled in their own countries using local parts and labor which are more cheaper. However, this is still not enough to make cars affordable to common people. People in countries where the car remains not affordable to them make do. A good example will be the Philippines. The Filipino jeepney is an icon in the Philippines. They used to be made from the small military jeeps left over by the Americans. The Filipinos made the chassis longer and put a roof on these abandoned military jeeps and made them public passenger vehicles. Now Filipinos have public transport thanks to these imaginative Filipinos. The Jeep also has a civilian model. It is called the owner Jeep. It is basically a copycat of the popular American Jeep but is more crude and made from the various spare parts of different vehicles. It too was popular but still expensive for the common Filipino and has been overshadowed by very old second-hand cars that are usually 20 years old or more. Again, this proves that cars are still very expensive for the common man even until today. Car manufacturers are even more successful in creating very expensive cars for a few people than in creating very cheap cars for almost all people. But to further emphasize the point that cars are not affordable to people, then we just need to look at poor countries like Africa. Most Africans, especially those living in the provinces and other remote areas, have very little contact with cars and other similar vehicles. A CNN documentary about rural life in Africa highlighted one very important development there. Africans even in the remote areas are progressing but not anywhere near or as fast as other developing countries. Most rural Africans do not dream of owning cars or of other vehicles. When they have the money, they buy bicycles. The bicycle is their family car. They use it to carry their children to school. They use it to carry their crops to the market to sell them. The children use the bicycle not only as a leisure toy but also for their errands. In fact, the sale of bicycles is booming in Africa. A lot of Africans are buying bicycles because cars are simply beyond their reach. Even motorcycles, the cheapest and simplest of the mechanized vehicles, are still expensive for them. After bicycles, the next logical step for them would be the motorcycles. After motorcycles, the next logical but very steep step will be cars. But the rest of the world is not like Africa. People especially in Asia have taken the next logical step. In many parts of the world, especially in Asia, the motorcycle is fast becoming the transport of choice. Not only is it the most cheapest form of mechanized transport, but it is also best suited to navigate the ever-increasing traffic jams in the congested streets of most cities of the world. It is also proving to be a credible people mover with similar capacities like small cars. People riding motorcycles have learned to balance themselves that more than 2 people can fit at one time on motorcycles. There are motorcycles that can accommodate many people, like 8 at a time, even when they are just slightly modified. There are even motorcycles that are starting to resemble cars without the expensive price and size of a car. Even the sale of electric motorcycles are better than electric cars. To discuss the bright future of the motorcycle industry is beyond the scope of this presentation and would be discussed in a separate presentation. It suffices to say that the car industry has made tremendous progress in car technology but has still failed to make the people's car dream a reality up to now. To make this dream a reality seems to be taking a long time, and if ever it does materialize, it may be too late for the industry. By this time, the motorcycle industry could have taken over the hearts and minds of the common people in terms of travel. More so now that the road conditions of the world are changing significantly. The road conditions of today are very different from the road conditions of yesteryear. One important sign of this is the traffic report. Television news never reported on traffic before, but now they do with regularity. This is proof that the traffic problem has gotten so worse that it is now newsworthy. Motorcycles beat cars when it comes to traffic. The rise of vehicles with off-road capabilities is also another sign. People are now not only traveling the mostly paved roads of yesteryear but are now traveling longer distances with irregular or rough road conditions which are more suited for motorcycle driving. People living in these areas now choose motorcycles or add motorcycles to their list of vehicles. Besides rough road conditions, motorcycles are portable enough to be ridden on small boats, vans, pickups, and even cars, which extends the reach of their owners. There is a long list of why motorcycles are being chosen instead of cars by more travelers now due to the changing road conditions and other changes that are now happening in the world, which will be discussed in a separate presentation. For now, it suffices to say that the unraveling transport future favors the motorcycle and seems to be headed in its direction. What is true is this: the motorcycle is filling the void of what the car should be for the common people of the world, who up to now are still waiting for the car to be practical for them. End of presentation.
Reminder: I may be presenting you correct, incorrect, or intentionally misleading information for my benefit only. I advise you to conduct your own study and double-check this presentation. Thank you for your time. I hope you will continue to watch my other presentations. See you again later.